Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Thursday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Connor Clark is back in. I think the underscore change, F_F. We will ask the Pride of Fairbury about that tomorrow. Just to let you in on the inside baseball, Connor Clark is taking classes from one Professor Bill Dolman. Smile and nod, Connor. Smile and nod. Fellas, a tough one last night, Nebraska basketball. They were a 2.5-point dog at home, and we got into this a little bit last night with Eddie Markowski, and we have our thoughts on Fred Hoiberg, on his tenure in Lincoln, and I think to a guy here in the room, or rooms, I think correct me if I'm wrong, there's a high level of respect for Fred Hoiberg. There's a high level of like for Fred Hoiberg. You're not, air quote, supposed to root, but we root. We want Fred Hoiberg to succeed. And you know what? It looks tough with the bad blackjack hand he's been dealt. I mean, the dealer gives him 17, and the dealer pulls out a 20 or 21. With the way the injuries have been piling up, or the way the season started without Derek Walker, and isolated, you're not going to blink too much at it and you say, man, this team's scrappy. They fight hard. You look at some of the young guys on the roster. Jamarcus specifically, loved what he did last night. Down Dawson, you see some highlights from. But, wow, body of work. This is year 4. And we are creeping into those waters of, Fred Hoiberg and his future at Nebraska, just because you're zooming out. Last night was last night. I think, listen, Northwestern's at worst a bubble team. It's not like you got drilled by a bad team last night, but you did the old tease that drives Nebraska basketball fans nuts, where you're down, you're back and forth, you're trading buckets, you're putting a 9-0 run together to take a 3-point lead, and then Northwestern closes like a freight train to go into recess. What was it, 11? They
13.
Were up 13. Thank you. Connor, you did the game last night, and
yes,
you did so on KRNU, and that close can't happen. Too many times Nebraska, it happened against Purdue. Purdue's number 1 seed, number 1 team in the country, and that'll happen. But for Northwestern to do it coming off of COVID, coming off a game just 24 hours, less than 24 hours earlier at Wisconsin, Nebraska is just too limited right now to expect any wins. They're going to have to fight, fellas, for 2 or 3 more wins with the remainder of their schedule. We were talking 7-5, 6-6, potentially down the stretch to get to the NIT. NIT looks like it's not even a shot because of these injuries. Now, maybe you're going to get remarkable resurgence from some of the young guys. Maybe you're going to have LaMarcus and you're going to have Denham grow these final few games and turn it around. But last night you did not have good games from your 2 dogs in Derek Walker and Sam Griesel. They were problematic. And listen, Derek was, I think, trying to do too much. The turnovers, turnovers were an issue, and Sam's going to give you 1,000% effort all the time, but he is way better at getting to the rim than most. I mean, his size is his advantage, but Northwestern, they played smart, they played physical, and for a team that doesn't hit a lot of threes, man, they looked like Larry Bird last night. They were on fire, and it's not like they were wide open shots. Nebraska just did not have an answer. They contested, but they didn't get what they needed. We'll get to your phone calls here in a minute. The lines are jammed. We'll get there in a minute. But disappointing game last night. We think winnable, but where they're at right now, Elijah, injury-wise, I don't know what's winnable anymore.
And I said yesterday that last night's game on the home floor, we shouldn't call it an unwinnable matchup with Northwestern. Hey, maybe you were right, Schmidt. Just with what Nebraska's offense can and can't do, it's going to be an uphill battle the rest of the Big Ten season, because what they can do is take care of the ball at least a little bit better than they have in previous years. But what they can't do is put the ball through the stinking hoop. Like
we know that they're problematic shooting the basketball, but you're going to need that to be way better. Well, because your defense is now a liability without your two big dogs.
Well, I texted you last night during the game. We were just before half, and Kisei finally started missing, and I texted you, I'll turn it back on
when he starts
once he starts hitting shots again, because that was Nebraska's only offense in the first half. He
had 15 of their first 19,
and then I think he assisted a 3-pointer in that 19.
Yeah, as well. on a transition play.
Yeah, and then the final point off that came from 1 for 2 from the free throw line from, I believe, Jamarcus Lawrence. So whenever that's your offense, it's Kisei, and what can Kisei do with the ball? You're going to have some issues. I mean, Sam Griesel, as you mentioned, had an off night. It wasn't quite what you expected from him. And then Derek Walker was pressing. Kind of felt like every single time he got the ball, he just wanted to go put his head down and bulldoze inside. And an offensive foul call or two went the other way and counted as a turnover for Nebraska. He just didn't quite look like himself. And I guess the Husker offense as a whole didn't quite look like themselves, barring Kisei Tominaga, who had a great first 15 minutes of that game. But then once that magic wore off, Nebraska had nothing going offensively.
They did not. We'll get to some of your emails. We're having some phone issues. We'll get those rectified in a moment, so you can sound off as well. It's always going to be a tough league. Northwestern looks like tournament worthy, and Tominaga started off hot and still finished 3-9 from 3-point land, 9-17 overall. Walker was 3-6, but the turnovers were just maddening. And you look at Nebraska and what was going to happen. The defensive rebounds were a problem, where Northwestern did some work on the offensive glass last night. 9 offensive rebounds total.
And I think they had 12 second chance points off those offensive rebounds in the first half alone, I believe is the number on that. I could be off by a couple points, but it was right around there. Maybe we should talk to the guy who called the game last night for the stats.
We'll get Connor's take in a minute. Let's get to the phone lines here and welcome in John on Hail Varsity Radio. John, thanks for hanging in. Go ahead.
Yes, I talked to the athletic director back in November, and I just asked him a point-blank question. What is it going to take for Hoiberg to be the coach next year? And he said there needs to be a winning season. So if there isn't a winning season, do you think his word is his bond and he will look for another coach? I know our second season that Hoiberg was here, it was the second worst season in Nebraska's history. And the third season was the third worst in Nebraska history. So I'm just wondering, Scott Frost, was let go ahead of time. So I just wonder what you think is going to happen.
I think the stress is real, John. Thanks for the phone call. And I think body language-wise, I think, and you were there, you saw him walk to the tunnel. I think the coaches are feeling the tightness, and I think the players are going to feel the tightness. And Trev wants to win in everything. Now, do you count this as year 0? Hear me out. Do you count this as year 0 where Fred changed? Fred is defensive-minded first versus wide open. Let's let it fly from 3-point land. Let's go get a bunch of 5-star splash guys that really do believe there is an I in team. Okay, that's what he was dealing with his recruiting philosophy. And while they were really talented individuals that are playing professionally, sure as hell didn't want to play ball together. And you had that as an issue and as a culture for 3 years with who you brought in. You brought in fantastic athletes. You brought in guys that were money one-on-one. But you got in a bunch of guys that thought they were 5 basketballs or wished they were 5 basketballs. Now you've got guys that are selling out for one another for the most part in a good way. And he's changed. So you give him another year. And what's on the horizon? What's the hope level like next year when you lose Griesel and Walker, to Andy Markowski's point? Listen, if they end up like 12-19, you can absolutely justify making a change. But it's going to do they fade or do they fight down the stretch, as limited as they are? Because I think Nebraska fans absolutely appreciate this basketball team. I think they appreciate Fred. You just wish some of the changes would have been made sooner rather than later. How are you counting this year? Is this the new regime you want to see more of under Fred? Or I've seen enough, it's 4 years. I'm not calling for his job. I'm not doing that. I want Fred to be here. I hope he gets another year. But he's got to do something with it, because I think they're feeling it. I think they wonder. And I think they know that they've, all right, for lack of a better term, sins of the past. Listen, I waited too long to adjust. I went with Abdel Massi and the type of recruits he was bringing in for too long. I've got a new boss. I've taken a pay cut. He wants to win. And now we're in trouble because my roster's not bulletproof to survive 2 grad transfers that are really, really standout dudes.
And there is something to note here with this status moving forward, and that's that Fred Hoiberg didn't get his stipulations of what it's going to take to get another year written down on paper like Scott Frost did. That was the one thing there, the huge thing. When are the requirements going to come out for Scott Frost's job? Fred Hoiberg never had that down in writing, and I'd venture to say that what Trev Albert said in a radio appearance a couple of months ago isn't going to have all that much sway in whether or not Fred Hoiberg sticks around. I think Trev Alberts is a big picture guy. I think he's going to look at the big picture and say, what did this year look like? What does the process look like? We have to account for the fact that 2 dudes who were, I don't want to say carrying your basketball team, but did the brunt of the effort defensively.
They were defensive guys and your rebounders.
They carried the dirty work of that team. They're now out for the season. I think that's something that Trev is going to take in account whenever the end of the season rolls around and he's deciding whether or not Fred gets another year. Is that, you know what, he can look at the big picture. He doesn't have to look at what was written down on paper and say, well, you met this, you didn't meet this, you didn't meet this.
They're both big boys. They're both grown-ups.
It's going to be a subjective decision in Trev's part by the end of the year, and I think he's going to account for the fact that, you know what, you didn't have all your pieces that you thought you were going to have, and that's going to happen during a basketball season. But Nebraska lost 2 of the most important guys, at least on the defensive end, in that dirty work category for this basketball team.
The question is why didn't you have better roster construction in the previous 3 years in case this happens? Connor, your take on things. You called it, your assessment here of Hoiberg and the questions that are there. I mean, what was the mood like at PBA last night?
Well, you saw a lot of people get up around the 6.5 minute mark of the second half last night.
Make a beer run outside of PBA?
Yes, exactly. But I think it's fair to say that the pressure's on, and I think it's fair to say that the next 10 games, in my opinion, I think decides his future, him being Fred Hoiberg. I want Fred Hoiberg to be here as much as the next guy. I do. I really like him. He's a respectable guy, as you mentioned. He's really just...
He's a good coach.
Yeah, he's good. He is a good coach.
He's a good coach. He's stand-up in the community. He really feels like a guy who represents the state of Nebraska everywhere but the win-loss column.
But this is the problem that I had with last night. When you have Derek Walker taking 4 shots in total, I know he wanted to get inside, but I don't think he was nearly as aggressive as he should have been. I know you're missing Bandamel and Gary, and that's your 2 best defenders. That doesn't help, and it also doesn't help when Ty Berry is a human flamethrower in the first half as well.
Nuts.
Literally did not miss. But the fact that you're missing those 2 guys, Walker wasn't his usual self. Griesel really wasn't that big of an impact player last night either. Tominaga cooled off really by the law of averages. And honestly, I thought one of the guys who put up some of the most quality minutes on the team last night was Sam Hoiberg.
Yeah.
He got in, and obviously he doesn't play that much. He gets in the ends of blowouts. But last night, I thought he came in and did a fantastic job of what he was asked to do.
I thought he showed better effort than anyone else on the floor.
I agree. And he was in the right place at the right time multiple times, played good defense. It was just, a matter of a matchup. I mean, he was guarding a 6'7" Nick Martinelli, so that didn't go too well for him. But when you have your usual impact guys offensively not do very much, especially in Walker's case, you're not going to win very many ball games. I think the next 10 games really do decide Hoiberg's future.
Do they rally and take it down to the wire, or do they fade? Yeah, Maryland coming up. I guess Penn State, I guess again. Minnesota, or maybe 2 you can circle. You got to go to Illinois again. Sparty comes to town. I mean, it's going to be brutal, and you've seen too many of these nosedives in Nebraska basketball. Doesn't matter who the coach is, other than Danny Nee. I mean, Danny didn't ever nosedive. Everyone else has had multi-game losing streaks where you quit going. or all of a sudden, hey, you want some tickets for Saturday? I mean, that phone call's coming. Let's get a quick phone call in here. Chris is with us on Hail Varsity. Chris, thanks for hanging on. Go ahead.
Hey, great show. Yeah, I want to see Fred succeed so bad, but I actually wanted to see Fred succeed with his offense and the way he played basketball, because now we're playing Doc Sadler, at least when Vanderbilt was there, playing that more of that style, and it's just horrible to watch. It's just
at least the wins were kind of coming that way, though. Or do you want it to?
I know.
Are you a style guy?
Well, I mean, if your guys can make some shots on occasion, but
Exactly.
I mean, I just never understood how Hoiberg can't teach shooting, and he can't. We know that because it's been 4 years and nobody can shoot except for Casey, and we lose 3 starters next year.
There's not a lot in the cupboard. There's some in the cupboard, but not enough.
And I just don't think he's, in 5 years for a college basketball coach, you have 4 straight losing seasons in a row, especially bad losing seasons, not like 15 and 17. I mean, you just don't survive that.
Chris, thanks for the
And I
phone
hate
call.
to see it, but I think he's, this is it for him.
We'll see where it goes. 10 games left to make a statement. Brandon Vogel's going to be with us. Hail Varsity continues.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
We'll spend time with Will Jesske. He is a standout ball player for Lincoln Southeast. He just committed to Nebraska Baseball. So Will Jesske coming up in 15 minutes. Jimmy Burrow, the proud papa of one Joe Burrow. Elijah and Connor both are going to wear some Cartier shades this weekend in support of one Joe Burrow. Gary Barnett next hour as well. We welcome in Brandon Vogel, who can also rock some Cartier shades. Are you an Oakley guy? Are you a Ray-Ban? Vogues, do you have prescription shades so you kind of look like that sinister serial killer in the back of a brewery? Tell me what keeps the sun out of your eyes.
This hat or a hat often.
You're not a shades guy?
Well, I am. For about 6 years, I've been saying I need to get prescription sunglasses because obviously I wear glasses all the time and I just haven't done it yet. So, but to answer your question, probably Ray-Bans. My Oakley days were more in high school, and probably for the best, I left them there.
Brother, if I tried to wear the Oakleys I wore 30 years ago, there'd be a line around the block to hand out a "don't do that again" reminder. Okay.
I think it would be ladies lined up around the block.
No,
Give yourself some
brother.
credit.
I mean, I just, God, they were ugly, and my folks said, you make your own choices sometimes. But yeah, they're interesting.
Have I ever told you about the time that I had a pair of sunglasses, a nice pair, Ray-Bans, stolen off my face at a music festival?
No.
Yeah, I've never told you
What
this
was her
story.
name?
No, it was a dude. A dude stole them off my face.
That's not acceptable.
That just sounds like
No,
user error.
like worse. Like we're all having a good time. It was at this concert called Idols. They're a British rock band. It was in Chicago, Lollapalooza, and we're like moshing just a little bit, nothing too serious, just a light mosh. And this dude comes up and kind of like pushes me a little bit, and then grabs my sunglasses off my face, and the crowd just takes them away from me. My sunglasses were gone forever.
Vogues, I think the guy who ripped his shades made a judgment call. Offensive tackle, does not like running. It's Lollapalooza, and away we go.
He was a target.
Those are nice glasses too. I miss those things every day.
Let's put into focus Fred Hoiberg for a minute. That's where we left off, Vogues. You know hoops as well. You follow Nebraska basketball. It's going to get tough, these final 10, because of their injury situation. Let's look at the scales of justice here if you're Trev Alberts. This year, this adjustment, or body of work?
If I had to guess right now, I would say it's probably adjustments this year would be what I would weigh first and foremost. And it's a tough call. It really is. I thought it was a tough call like 10, 12 days ago, and things have gotten worse since then just in terms of additional injuries. Jacob Padilla did a really good job in his column on Wednesday kind of outlining, when they had the core starting 5, 10 games, they were 6-4. Most of their high major wins, good wins early in the year, came when those guys were available. Without them, which was only 10 games to that point, they were 4-6. So what do you do with that? How do you weigh that? If it were me right now, I would kind of lean towards you bring Hoiberg back and you give him a shot to continue on what the progress that I think is really there. You got to look between the lines a little bit, but it's there. That said, you look at who you lose from this team, and it almost feels like if you do that, it's just another roll of the dice, because there's not a lot there that gives me confidence beyond the kind of gains that they've made this year that, oh, well, you have this guy coming back, and that's why you're good. I don't feel that. So it really is like up in the air for me.
Brendan Vogel's with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine at Brandon L. Vogel. Are you siding with it's a good Big Ten or it's a down Big Ten? Let's look at the context, what they're going through in the league.
Yeah, it feels a little bit down from where it's been recently. You've got Purdue kind of carrying the flag for the conference. It's also just been a little bit of a strange year in terms of college basketball broadly when you look at some of the usual suspects that haven't quite been what they would normally be. That said, you break it down beyond that and kind of get into like some of the Ken Pom stuff and the quality wins for Nebraska. Like, I think everything Nebraska until the injury bug really, really bit them here after the start of the new year. Like, I thought Nebraska was in a good spot. I was impressed by what I had seen to that point. And it's tough because the injuries that they sustained to the guys who sustained them really, really hurt. And I think anybody can see that, no matter how close attention you pay to basketball each winter.
Brandon Vogel's with us on Hail Varsity Radio, and we were talking in the last segment about how important the last 10 games are and if that could decide Fred Hoiberg's job. And I personally think it is. I mean, the pressure is certainly on the coaching staff right now. What do you make of the next 10 games? As you just mentioned, a more down Big Ten, which I agree with. What do they have to do record-wise maybe in those final 10 for Hoiberg to feel comfortable going into the offseason?
Yeah, I think you've got to grab the games where you're going to have the best shot. Minnesota, Penn State, maybe just those two off the top of my head. And then if you can grab another one kind of out of nowhere, that would show me that, okay, you dealt with really extreme challenges in terms of who got injured and what they meant to the team. You regrouped, you won the games, you had the best shot to win. And if you grab another one, then, I have a tough time finding fault with making the best out of a tough situation. If they do that, the concern I called it another roll of the dice coming back with what Nebraska would have. You need not a lot. You need some additions through the transfer portal. And it just feels like the longer that kind of remains a theme of the Hoiberg era, the less comfortable I become with it. Like, how often can you kind of, hit the random button and hope that this combination is the one that works? There just hasn't been that steady trajectory, which is the primary reservation for me. That said, and you can't change that over the last 10 games. What you can, I think, is show good effort, show a way to problem solve a little bit. And if they do that, it would give me a little bit more confidence towards the retention side of this discussion.
Brandon Vogel's with us here at Hail Varsity Radio. And Brandon, do you think whenever we look at the future of Hoiberg that we have to look at the past 6 months for Husker athletics as a whole? It's been a long 6 months for Trev Alberts whenever you look at the coaching search, and I'm sure how exhausting that is. And Trev's made a point saying, you know what, he's not afraid to be a grinder. He's not afraid to do the dirty work that's going to allow these teams to find the best success possible. But at the same time, Trev Alberts is human, and coming off of just an exhausting 6 months looking for your next head football coach, do you think that's a factor here with him deciding whether or not he wants to keep Hoiberg or to, get into another coaching search this time with the basketball team?
Yeah, I think it could be a definite factor there. And I mean, I think in Fred's favor, based on some of those comments we've heard from Alberts, it does help that, in my view at least, it was more apparent on the basketball side of like, hey, the original plan we came here with may not be the plan. And this year's a good example of it, kind of switching to a more defensive focus. So we're going to change that plan because we know we need to get results. Like the effort from Hoiberg and the staff on that front has always been apparent to me. Sort of like, where we started this basketball conversation, though. The other side of it also, with Nebraska entering a college basketball search to me is a lot different than it is in football, because football has had that long period of sustained success. Basketball hasn't had that. It's had its up periods, nowhere near as long as any Husker fan would want. So if I were the AD, I would feel a little bit more freedom going into the college basketball market to really identify somebody who is maybe an up-and-comer. You just don't have – I should be careful saying this, but you don't have quite the same pressure, I don't think, to go out there and get a head coach hire who has a ton of curb appeal. Like, if you want to take somebody who you believe is the AD, like, I've watched this guy, he's the guy, I think you have a little bit more freedom to do that. And that might make it a little bit more enticing to enter that coaching market on the basketball side.
Brendan Vogel's with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine. Subscribe, HailVarsity.com/offer is where you go to get the digital and the magazine. Great new issue out, more on Rule and his staff. Vogues, will end with this, and we've spent a lot of time on basketball and Fred making the adjustment, the adaptation here in year 4, and it's given him a fighting chance. This study has been very real by Rule and his staff for diving into the Big Ten. And on its outset, what do you think they have under their arm? What's their saddlebag, so to speak, that they're taking with them into spring? Yes, they're going to develop, but they're also training for next season.
Yeah, I think, making the transition on offense to whatever that looks like. And I mean, I know, Satterfield came out and said that they're going to run the ball. Rule has said the same. He says he wants to win the line of scrimmage. All important things. So I think that part you got to plan for a little bit. It's going to be a little bit of a transition for Nebraska. Flipping the scheme defensively, that almost feels like more of a mindset change for me with how Nebraska is going to choose to play on that side. But most of the intrigue going into spring football is going to be on the offensive side, I think. Can they do that? Like, everybody knows the importance of running the football, winning the line of scrimmage. It's a concern that you have to have at a program like Nebraska. When Matt Rule went to Baylor, you don't have to worry about weather there in the same way that you do. It's kind of interesting. You think about the SEC. Nobody's out there saying, well, we got to be able to run the ball because we're going to need to in November. So just him kind of going that way. And Marcus Satterfield, I wrote about this in the issue that's out now, the January issue, hasn't been that run heavy during his OC stops. So it feels to me like a little bit of a switch. So that's going to be super intriguing. I think that's kind of one of the key areas you got to have a plan for as the staff takes over.
Well, we have some folks chiming in on the stream with the if Nebraska goes a different direction in basketball, no up-and-comer, please, pony up. Well, Nebraska went and just got a name. They just did. They got the mayor, for God's sake, and I like the fact that he's been willing to change, and I hope it works out. Again, we've got our Go Big Fred T-shirts on here underneath our zip-ups and sweatshirts and all that good stuff. And I'm sure there's one off to the south wall in the Vogue's office.
That's just way too good of a catchphrase for it to not have worked out,
Well, we'll see where it goes. Vogues, we will talk Saturday morning. Keep the eye black on, my friend. Thanks again for the time.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
There he is, Brandon Vogel with us. Will Jesske, part of the Husker Baseball program, up next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio. And now, back to Hail.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel, part of the Nebraska baseball team for 2023. Standout from Lincoln Southeast, Will Jesske is with us as he committed, earlier this week to play baseball. Will, congratulations. Thanks for a few minutes. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for your time.
Hey, we're doing great. Tell me about this this stress level, this recruitment process, and then being able to stay in Lincoln?
Well, I really wasn't too stressed. I put a lot of faith in my Lord. He was really my comfort. So I started off at Wichita State. I ended up decommitting just with coaching changes. They have a great program down there going for them, but I just didn't really like the coaching change. So I planned on decommitting, and my next step was to try to go to UNL. It was something that it's always been in my dreams, just to wear the N across my chest. And I was able to go to a camp Sunday. I don't remember the date for sure, 4 days ago. And I had a really good camp. I hit very good. My fielding could have been a little bit better, but we had a talk after the camp, and 2 days later they offered me a spot on the team. So very, very excited about that.
Well, at what point in time did you realize Division I baseball could be in the cards for you? At one point did that dream kind of come to fruition, and you said, you know what, I think I could be a pretty good ball player someday?
It was last year, my junior year. I had a really standout season that I made all state for Super State, and that kind of really changed my recruiting process. I started talking with a lot of Midwest schools, and I really liked Wichita State at the time. They had amazing coaches, great facilities, and it was in the Midwest. It was close to home. So that's where I commit to start my journey.
Will Jesske is with us, part of Nebraska's baseball recruiting class 2023. Another night headed to Nebraska along with Max Butenbach. And let's spend a minute here on the camp, who your main contact was, and what were the conversations like with Coach Bolt, Coach Christie, if you can take us there. What was that like for you, and how'd you celebrate?
My main contact was with Coach Herbel. I talked with all the coaches kind of at camp. They were amazing coaches. They're people who I really will enjoy being around these next couple of years. But Herbel was the main guy I talked to. My main talks were at camp. I really didn't talk to them as much before. So my main stuff was either at camp or 2 days later. So those were my main talks.
Will Jesske is with us. He is playing ball for Nebraska. Will, let's talk about your training and your process with just day-to-day, getting better. You crushed the baseball. I know you put a lot of work in to raise your level. How has that process been? Is it something that has been a grind, a job, or do you just love putting the work in?
I just really love putting the work in. It all starts at the Yard, Nebraska. That's my main source of where I get my baseball skills from. I spend close to 2 hours a day there. That's with Todd Mosser, and then I have numerous friends that go there, either younger or older, and they help me feed balls. And that's just been a significant impact for me. Just looking up to the older kids and then providing rides for younger kids it's just helped me out significantly.
Well, you mentioned the fact that you did take a leap with your junior year last year. It got you all state honors. And take me through what the training for last year was like before your junior year. Well, what kind of led to that jump in your game in your junior season?
Well, I would say about 80% of pitches are either outside or off-speed pitches. My main goal last year was to really work on that pitch. That is something I struggled with sophomore year. And the Southeast coaching staff just devised a plan for me working on that outside pitch. And our hitting coach, Coach Christensen, was very crucial in helping me with that outside pitch. So that was something I really worked on that helped me bat at that level. As far as defense, I really worked on that. I think I will play third base and outfield this year, and then at Nebraska, I think I'll be kind of a utility player.
Well, with baseball season right around the corner, what have you been working on this offseason to improve your game?
My main thing is kind of the off-speed breaking ball pitches. as well as that outside pitch. I mean, that's just something I see on a day-to-day in the spring baseball season. So that's my main goal to work towards, either outside pitches or high fastballs. They'll try to blow by me. So
power numbers, you had incredible slugging percentage. Your RBI number was fantastic. You went yard several times. Who do you model your game after? Is there a major leaguer you really like?
I was a big Gordon fan. He was a lefty.
I bet.
I would say my swings kind of around the Trout area. I really like that short but kind of long stride. I really watch videos of him a lot. That really helped my swing. I like taking videos of my swing a lot, so just kind of critiquing my swing all the time.
Well, I got to ask you, you're talking to a Williamsburg guy. I'm going to claim it anyway, not as long as my brother got to, but Williamsburg wiffle ball. Lay it out for me. Where did you guys play?
Oh, man. We were sneaking everybody's backyard. We were kind of the devil kids back in the day. It was me, Nate McCashlin, the Newell brothers, Cam and Cal. Who am I missing out? Ben Hunziger, Brevin Hoffman, the Reed family, Grant and Nolan Reed, and then my brothers, Jared Jesske and Jacob Jesske. And we were kind of the gang, I guess. It was a wild group. We'd always play wiffle ball together, and that's where I found my first love for the game. It was just passed down from my family, and then we really just played almost every day.
So did you just trash Hunziker's backyard?
Pretty much. I'm sure there's still stuff in the backyard that remains there.
Man, wiffle ball's the best. Were you how wicked was your breaking pitch?
Oh, it was not wicked at all. I mean,
no?
I had to put a little spit on it. So.
Well, I'm a little surprised here that you're saying you're working on your off-speed hitting, and you've been playing wiffle ball your whole life. Like, what's up with that? There's not even a fastball in wiffle ball.
Yeah. We played ball a little bit, and I couldn't handle that stuff. So, wiffle ball was our main go-to.
Well, we'll end with this. You mentioned you always wanted to play with that red N on your chest. What hooked you with Nebraska baseball as a kid?
Just growing up with it. It's not only baseball, it's football as well. Just going to the games. I mean, I remember just barely crawling around Haymarket Park, even watching the Salt. Just being close to home and wearing that N is just surreal that I can be able to do that here soon. So I need to keep putting in hard work, and hopefully it'll pay off here in the future. And hopefully we can just turn the program around and yeah.
Will Jesske with us, Lincoln Southeast, off to Nebraska, part of the 2023 class. Will, best of luck. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, Hail Varsity, presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark in. Big thanks to Will Jesske, part of Nebraska Baseball. Gave his commitment just last weekend. So another Southeast night headed to Haymarket Park. That's awesome. Brandon Vogel with us this hour. We'll talk Bengals from a Burrow with a Burrow. How's that sound? Jimmy Burrow going to be with us. Proud Papa Joe Burrow kicks off next hour. The adventure that has been what started out as a bit of a Super Bowl hangover season, anything but, as Cincinnati's the hottest there is in the NFL. So Jimmy Burrow with us here at 5:05. Gary Barnett will chime in. There's been a lot of smoke, no pun intended, from Boulder with Nebraska guys in Colorado, how that continues to amp up, and it's climbing the charts, so to speak, with most anticipated game, one of the most anticipated games for the non-conference season. We'll get in there with Coach Barnett as things lead up, and we'll dive into, all right, just how annoying was it for Nebraska to recruit the hell out of Colorado like they did all those years, for as many years as they did, and vice versa. Colorado decades later now returning the favor as they've, set up shop trying to get into Omaha.
Hit the Omaha Metro pretty hard yesterday.
Yeah, and
pretty hard might be an understatement.
What's off limits, right? There was like a gentleman's agreement back in the day with Nebraska and Oklahoma. We won't head up north. You don't come down south. Well, once Barry was gone, hey, Will Shields, how you doing? Hey, Mike Minter, how you doing? Right, just a couple of Oklahoma, Philip Dillard too, but those are three names that come to my mind from Oklahoma. But yeah, we'll get into recruiting each other's state and how that's grown. Nebraska's always going to recruit Colorado, but Colorado really recruiting Nebraska right now, so that's on the way with Gary Barnett. And then Veasan's very own Danny Burke next hour. What's he think of the lines? Guys, let's just talk about mom or dad's money, or even mama's money in my case. What do we do here this weekend? If we got a guy that tends bar down the road and you want to put a bet down, or you just jump on an app, and soon enough it'll be happening here in Lincoln and in the state of Nebraska. Those lines scare me, specifically with Kansas City and Cincinnati.
Well, I think you stick with player props this weekend.
Well, I'm just going to see what Jamar Chase does, or Joe Burrow does, or Mixon. That's the route. Last thought here from Fred Hoiberg. Let's get his take here. Cut 4, Connor, with Fred, and just the reality of the situation here. And that defense really doesn't seem portable anymore. How portable is it?
We're going to have to change things up, and went to a little three-quarter court press. And, they had some shots, but they were different shots than what they were getting in their man. And that led to some missed shots and gave us an opportunity to get out of the zone where they're not quite as matched up. Unfortunately, we had a few possessions where we could have cut it maybe to single digits. We didn't block out, and we let Adish get to the basket on a cut. We just started putting that in yesterday, and we obviously need to fine-tune it and work on it. But to have a change up with our group right now, the way we are with key injuries, especially to some really defensive-minded guys, we're going to have to change things up and try to buy some possessions.
Well, they didn't box out, and they clearly didn't take care of the basketball. Hour 2 on.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back into it at Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency, and a lot of eyes on Cincinnati and Kansas City Round 2 AFC title game. We welcome in longtime coach, former Husker, and a lot of great years with Ohio and, of course, North Dakota State. Jimmy Burrow with us. Coach, thanks for the time. How we doing?
We're doing good. Looking forward to the weekend.
I bet you are. And before we jumped on air, weather's been on a lot of the country's mind. Everybody got to Buffalo okay from the Burrow crew, it sounds like.
Yeah, we had them coming in from a lot of different places. Nebraska was a big concern, but since you didn't get the big snowstorm there, family was able to get out of there and get to Buffalo, and we had some weather issues there, but not for us watching the game, but certain people out of Cincinnati still couldn't get there. We'd have had more fans, but they had some weather issues here. But we had our family and friends and fans there for sure.
Well, what an impressive win by Cincinnati. Coach, what did they get your take here on how the season started in Cincinnati? And if you could circle a turning point, a tipping point in the year that got Cincy going.
First of all, it started the day before camp when Joe had an emergency appendectomy, so that set back the whole process. He missed about 2 weeks of camp. We had the new offensive line that had been put together in the off season, so there were some hurdles we had to overcome early in the season to kind of get that continuity going with the offense, and that was a hard thing to overcome. I think just being able to work together those first few games and come back and win one here and there. And even the first game, when it was probably one of Joe's worst games that he's had in the NFL, he threw a touchdown with no time on the clock, and we were just going to kick an extra point and win the game, and we had it blocked. So things just didn't go our way, but there was always still confidence and hope that we could put it together, and we did.
What's your impression as a longtime football coach, seeing the team really rally? And I always get a kick out of covered Zach when he was here at Nebraska, but I get a kick out of Zach going to the different night spots delivering game balls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's been fun. Zach does a great job on and off the field, and so we appreciate what he does. Robin and I were able to do that. They asked us if we wanted to present a game ball here in town last week in Athens, so it was the first game ball presented outside of Cincinnati, so that was a lot of fun. But those guys were prepared last week. I mean, the defense is really playing great. The offensive line was unbelievable. We were able to run the ball, and that gave Joe and his receivers in the passing game a lot of opportunities to not just have to throw, every down. So it was a great team win.
Jimmy Burrow with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, AFC title game. Joe Burrow, of course, leading Cincinnati back down to Arrowhead. Let me ask you, Coach, where did you go in Athens? Where did you bring the game ball to?
Courtside. It's a local pizza place and a hangout. That's the kind of the main little drag there uptown. We had a good mix of older people, and then that's one of the hot spots, night spots on a Thursday night. So we kind of had the old group in there, and then here come the students were coming in for their Thursday night get-togethers, and so it was just a packed house. And they had done a nice video in conjunction with the Bengals, and we had a game ball and presented it to Athens. We certainly appreciate all the support that the people in this area have always given to Joe and our family, and so it was good to get that game ball to the courtside there in town.
Now, is Joe going to get a chance to go sign that game ball and go see everyone? Well, what kind of event is it like in Athens whenever Joe comes back hometown?
Well, he comes back. He usually just kind of stays off of Court Street, which is a good thing. But we might get him to sign that ball one of these days. I'm sure he did. He did a little video in the locker room, which I can't believe the Bengals must have asked him right after that win, because that's. I probably would never ask him to do something like that right after the game, but he did a short video thanking Athens and presenting them the game ball. And once again, everybody thought it was really a cool thing to do, and we had a lot of fun.
Speaking of the post-game locker room, do you have a victory cigar picked out for Sunday afternoon? Or are you just going to let that one go until the game finishes?
Yeah, that's kind of after the game. We have a location where Jamar's dad, Jimmy Chase, and I lit one up last year in the parking lot after the game. So we know where that place is, and Jimmy smokes cigars way more than me, so he'll have me one ready to go.
Jimmy Burrow is with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, you mentioned a lot about Cincinnati's game plan and their balance, and being a defensive coach, put your DC hat on, and in your estimation here, what are the problems Cincinnati poses, not just maybe for Kansas City, but just for teams around the league? Zach seems to have, and Coach Callahan, man, their offense is so balanced, and it seems like take one thing away, they could be able to beat you with something else.
Well, really, it all starts with the running game. I think if we can run the ball like we did last week, I mean, it's just creates all kind of issues for a defense. If we can't run the ball, then we pretty much throw almost every down, and we can still move the ball that way too. But the running game opens everything up, and then you get to the four great receivers: the tight end Hayden Hurst and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd and Jamar Chase. I think they're the three best in the as a unit in the league. Joe can can beat you throwing the ball. He can scramble and throw off platform when he does that. So just creates a lot of issues. And then Joe Mixon is a beast back there at the running back position, and so it presents a lot of problems. Joe, people try to blitz, and we get the ball out hot to the receivers and let them run with it. If they drop people back, Joe's really good at finding holes in the zone, and the receivers are all really smart. That's kind of goes unnoticed, and people don't give them as much credit for that. They say they're great athletes, which they are, but they're really smart. They understand coverages. They understand concepts in the passing game, and you put all that together, and you got a real explosive offense. And then Zach and Coach Callahan put a great plan together every week.
From an accuracy standpoint, I mean, Joe's really special. Is that something he's always had, or is that something you see him continuing to work on and perfect?
No, that's kind of always been his calling card. Early in his career, when as he's developing physically, his arm certainly wasn't what it is today. So I think he understood back then that accuracy was something that he had to have, and then as he developed that, and he became stronger, and his arm became stronger, and his whole body became physically stronger, then he still was able to maintain that accuracy, and he continues to do that. And the one good thing that you see out there too is when he scrambles, that's hard to maintain that accuracy, but he seems to be able to be a very accurate passer again on his scrambles also. So once again, it just makes it hard for a defense to defend.
Yeah, no matter what happens, he always looks like he's got a level head, whether he's scrambling, whether it's 3rd and 8, 3rd and 1. It doesn't matter. He always has a level head. And now you look at this game on Sunday, going to a formidable home field advantage in Arrowhead. But we had Bengals corner Mike Hilton on the sideline on Sunday. It's a great video released by NFL Films saying at the end of the game, we'll see you in Burrowhead, referring to Arrowhead Stadium because Joe Burrow still undefeated at Arrowhead. What's your take on that, Joe, going in battling not only the Chiefs but also the Chiefs' home field advantage?
Yeah. The crowd doesn't really seem to affect Joe and our guys. It can't. I mean, Arrowhead is unbelievably loud. Buffalo Stadium the other day was unbelievably loud, and Joe started the game off 9 for 9 and 2 touchdowns. So, he always says that his confidence and his ability and our team's ability, or his team's ability to be in those situations is shows up because they're prepared. Zach does a great job preparing the players individually, and Joe as a quarterback, and then the team. And he says if you know what you're looking for on game day, and you know what's supposed to transpire in your game plan and in your plays, then you can look calm and confident and still understand if things aren't going good that your coaches are going to make adjustments and make changes, and you're still going to be able to come back. I think he also understands leadership and what that means as a quarterback, and you can't lose your cool out there. You can't show whether it's frustration or too much joy and celebration. So that's, I think, where he gets his demeanor and how he's able to react and act out there on the football field.
Coach Jimmy Burrow with us here. A couple more minutes at Hail Varsity Radio. Joe and Cincinnati off to Arrowhead for the AFC title game and another trip to the Super Bowl, perhaps. Coach, have you been part of the advisory committee with the sunglasses collection?
No, people that know me from back in Nebraska or wherever I've been know that any fashion statement that Joe has definitely doesn't come from me. But he likes to look good and show confidence when they're traveling and game day. My wife, Joe's mom, Robin, was a fashion merchandising major at once she left Cook, Nebraska to go to college, and now she's a principal. But earlier she was involved in things like that. So maybe that's where he gets it. But he doesn't ask me for the what he should wear on game day, because some of those things I would probably veto.
Gotta have one of these games. He's just gotta raid your closet, and we'll see what the outfit looks like.
Oh yeah, I mean I'm still a sweatshirt and blue jeans guy, and really Joe, for the most part, is like that too. If you saw him, around the house, or I'm sure the locker room and those type things, it's pretty casual. But over the years, he's developed his own sense of what he likes to wear, and he's not afraid to kind of go out there with some of those outfits.
Coach, I wanted to get your thoughts, if you've had any crossover or connection at all with Matt Rule in the coaching circles, or just a reaction to his time now in Lincoln as Nebraska now in the Rule era.
I don't know Matt. I as everybody, when I knew he was going to be the coach at Nebraska, started reading more things about him and his resume and what he did in college, is outstanding, and there's a proven track record there. So you just hope that he embraces the Nebraska tradition and understands it, which I'm sure Trev thinks he does, and so that all points to hopefully Nebraska getting back to the way it once was once upon a time. So we're still Nebraska fans, and I hope that they can get it going there.
Had a chance not long ago during some of the bowl games, chance to be on Coach Walden's radio show and keep in contact with Jim Walden. And I know you coached with him and played for him, but I found out you were his neighbor growing up. How was Coach Walden as a neighbor? Did you have to cut his yard? Or, tell me about that experience.
We moved next door to him in the 5th grade. I actually became his starting corner as a 10th grader, and then he went to Nebraska. That's a whole story in itself. That's how I ended up at Nebraska. I was just on his show, I think a couple Saturdays ago. Joe, because I was there with him at Iowa State and eventually became the head coach at Ames. That's where Joe was born. And so my whole family history is traced back to Coach Walden at some point, whether it was next door, going to Nebraska, hiring me at Washington State, asked me to go with him to Iowa State. So he's an important part for me, not only growing up, but just my whole history of football and being a coach. And even Jamie and Dan that ended up playing in Nebraska, they grew up in Ames, Iowa, and played for the Little Cyclones, because that's all because of Coach Walden. He's an unbelievable person, and he's done so much for me in my lifetime that I'm always indebted to him for a lot of the things that I've done in football, for sure.
Coach Jimmy Burrow with us, Joe and the Bengals in Kansas City. Coach, enjoy your trip to KC. We'll be rooting for you. Thanks for giving us a few minutes today.
All right. Thank you. Go Bengals. Go Huskers.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Big thanks to Jimmy Burrow as he is off to Kansas City. We welcome in the Hall of Fame coach, Gary Barnett, with us. Coach, are you bundled up? Do you have the electric blanket going?
I had actually 3 blankets on me last night. Mary likes to sleep in a Tundra, so I woke up in the middle of the night sweating. But yeah, it's chilly down here, and but by our standards, and somehow I still find a way to get out and play. But it's not like it has been. So it's hopefully this is just a one-off year, but I hope this isn't a trend down here.
Well, juniors heading down end of February, so I think he will break the ice for all of you Arizonans with the way the weather's been. Coach, it's been a lot of fun kind of watching things build up, and Will Compton does his podcast, and Matt Rule was on that earlier this week, and topic of Colorado came up, and you have Colorado, Coach Prime, and even his offensive coordinator was in Omaha this week, and Nebraska sees a lot of other programs find their way into the metro. And even some outlying smaller communities. Notre Dame's been in Ainsworth for a tight end, but the Buffs are making their presence felt in Omaha. Malachi Coleman, of course, ended up at Nebraska, but he was a Buff target. PJ Fleck. I want to ask you: did you spend much time recruiting Nebraska? And flip it around, did it bother you how much Nebraska recruited Colorado?
Well, yes, I'll explain that, but these two programs are in different positions than they were when I was recruiting.
Sure.
I mean, completely different situations, and it's interesting because I spent too much time in Lincoln because I went in there almost every year as an assistant and then even as a head coach, and everybody that I was sure I was going to get ended up at Nebraska. And I started thinking, if this is not a good use of my money and or time. I mean, we finally got Jake Behrens out of there, who was a Gatorade Player of the Year and a fullback, and I don't think you guys were using him anymore. But and then when Hawkins came in, he didn't use him either. But he was ideal for what I was doing at the time. But every guy, Mike Petco, I can go down the list, all these guys that I was sure that were going to come to Colorado didn't come. So I pulled the dogs off. I said, my mom drowned all the dumb ones, so I am not going to continue to go in there. And then you're right. I mean, we hated to see them come in, see the Cornhuskers come in and take our guys. And then, once in the 90s, once we started rolling in 89, 90, and then even when I was back there a little bit in the early 2000s, we didn't lose very many guys to Nebraska. But all along we have. And but Nebraska has had to go out and get other guys. But we tried, just couldn't get them. But it's starting to build in Boulder. I can tell you that September 9th game is going to be fun, Chris. And you can't buy a ticket. I mean, it's people are gearing up right now. They've got it circled.
Well, I just got an email from a dear friend who also has a shop in Estes, Big Red of the Rockies. I mean, he's already putting stuff together for the mother of all tailgates in Estes, and we were there out a couple 3 years ago now, when Nebraska played out there, and it was all red, Coach, and I know that is not going to be tolerated or attempted to be tolerated, and I know Coach Prime's. Does he have an idea about Nebraska, Colorado, or is he learning about Nebraska, Colorado? You and I get it. You obviously lived it. I grew up watching it, but it's just a new era now. But it's getting rekindled. It feels like.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if he does or not. I doubt if he does. You can't. You have to live that to really understand it. But by the way, there's a new state law that's triple taxing any stores that have the name Red in it. So your buddy may just go out of business up there. They're going to tax him out of business. But, the two programs, it's amazing how in different places they are now than where they were. I mean, we were almost dead last in everything this year going in, and you guys struggled and have for the last couple of years. And here we're getting all this attention between the two states at least. And we'll get some nationally just because of the two coaches. But now all of a sudden we've got a big rivalry game and everybody's all fired up about two bad teams. So, it's interesting the way that's rolling.
Well, it made Stuart Mandel's mailbag, for the love of God. I mean, listen, your opener with TCU is going to be a big wow factor with TCU where they were at, and of course Coach Prime's first ball game. But then a week later, I mean, you're talking 1-11 and 3-9 or 4-8. But I mean, it hits home with a lot of college football fans, and at least there's been some recency, right, with home and home, where Nebraska, Colorado played. I know that it probably can happen, but Coach, it'd be fun to see you guys every year again.
There's no question. I'll tell you, people in Colorado would love it. They would absolutely love it. And it's a moneymaker for both. I mean, I'll guarantee you, that'll be the only sell. That may not be true, but that one will sell out. And, it'll be the first sellout in a long time, probably since the last time we played you guys. So in Boulder. But, everything is pointing in the right direction. And, the difference is neither Matt Rule nor Prime are going to play in this game. It's going to be your players and our players, and we'll just have to see what happens.
Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. We're already hyping up here week 2 of the college football season, the Big Red Army invading Boulder, or at least that's the hope. And I know Buff fans are like, nope, can't do it, won't do it. No Nebraska fans allowed. And the legend that there is a triple tax on anything with red in the title. I like it. You lay this out for me. Was this urban legend, or was it absolutely banned, barred? That was red really banned and barred by Mac?
Yeah, it's truth.
Seriously.
And in fact, one of our guys had a red dealer car, and he made him take it back. And and we'd go on a trip, a wives' trip, and the wives, they just knew they couldn't wear anything red on that trip, no matter, So anywhere that we would go, and my wife was angry for years about that, but it was the way Mac would do it, and I didn't do that, but it was sort of fun to buy into it every once in a while, because it was always made for an icebreaker in conversations. But no, Mac actually did it, and nothing was red in our building all year. I mean, so we'd have a recruit come in red, and we'd make him change shirts. But if I had a recruit in and he had a red shirt on, I said, "You can't wear that. You got to go change shirts before you go see Coach McCartney."
Man.
So, yeah.
So, who was the assistant who had the red sports car?
It was Ron Vanderlyn, I think, had a red car. He made him take it back. So.
Man.
You couldn't even rent a red car on the road and pick Mac up it. You would just tell the car dealer or the rental car, "I can't have a red car. I'm picking up Coach McCartney."
Did you ever have a GA you wanted to set up and say, "Hey, go make sure you rent a red car and go pick Mac up in the airport"? Do you ever try that trick?
Yeah, well, we didn't do it. Everybody knew you just can't do that sort of stuff. So,
Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, going to ask you about some NFL this weekend, and I'm excited. I think Burrow and Cincy are playing great ball. Mahomes seems to be somewhat healed in Kansas City, and it's just, man, you're down to the AFC title game, and then Hurts and Philly look impressive, and Shanahan and Denver are, I should say Shanahan and San Francisco are making do. They are great. Are you leaning one way or the other?
Well, the way I look at this thing, first of all, Philadelphia has got the best defense out there.
Yes.
And Jalen Hurts is just so solid. Joe Burrow is on fire. I couldn't believe they did it with 3 linemen down last week against Buffalo. And then with Mahomes with a high ankle sprain, I don't care what he says, you can't play the level he wants to play with that ankle. And then, San Francisco just, Purdy's doing a good job, but they're just, they're a little shy of what they need to be, I think. So, but good games. I'd be surprised if Philadelphia didn't beat San Francisco. I'd be surprised probably if Cincinnati didn't beat Kansas City. And then when you get down to Philadelphia and Cincinnati, it's probably hard to go against the defense that Philadelphia plays. So we'll see. It's been there hasn't been a clear-cut choice this year, and it's sort of been exciting to watch everybody sort of slug it out.
We have been trying to talk Mom into renting her house out for Super Bowl week. Have you thought about it?
No, but I got a guy down the street that's getting $22,000.
Yeah.
For that. I mean, I don't know if he's getting it for the week or if he's getting it for the day, but he's getting $22,000 for it. So, yeah, and they're telling you how to do it and on television and who to go through and how you should price it. So, yeah, there's people making money.
Did you expect Hurts and Burrow and even Mahomes to be as great as they are in the NFL?
Burrow, yes. Hurts, I wasn't sure. Mahomes, I didn't have a clear vision of how good he was.
Mm-hmm.
Hurts, I knew, I didn't know if he'd be a starter and a big-time starter or not. But Burrow, I thought he had hit,
mm-hmm.
That last year in school. And, I thought for sure he'd be a difference maker. So.
Gary Barnett with us. Coach, enjoy your weekend, warm up, and we'll chat soon. Thanks for the time today.
All right, Chris. Talk to you later.
Good stuff from Coach Barnett. That rivalry is brewing for Nebraska, Colorado. It's existed, but could get rekindled. Hands on the wheel, eyes and mind straight ahead. The driver. One job, that's to drive a message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Best bets on the way with Danny Burke.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Burke's Best Bets time. Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Danny Burke with us, VSiN Sports Network at Danny Burke 5 on Twitter. Catch him during the weekends on VSiN and, of course, the Danny Burke podcast. Pride of Chicago, it is that time. It is AFC, NFC title game. Let's gear up for the Super Bowl. But first, it's pretty intriguing, Danny, with some landing spots for several names in the NFL. How are you?
I'm doing good, Schmitty, and yeah, you're right. I mean, even though we still have this season going on, doesn't mean you can't already speculate for next year. I mean, people have started that even in the midst of this past season during the regular season of it, not just the playoffs. But, yeah, it keeps us entertained, especially from the betting perspective in these slower summer months when the NFL's not going on. But luckily we have that and the games to look forward to.
Danny Burke is with us here. It's Burke's Best Bets. And Danny, let's start it off with the early game on Sunday. The 49ers head into Philly, taking on the Eagles in the city of brotherly love. And the 49ers are a 2.5-point underdog. What do you like here?
So I am uniquely invested in this game. A couple weeks before Jimmy Garoppolo got injured, I took a bet on the 49ers at plus 550 to win the Super Bowl for a fairly sizable amount. So I'm in a position right now where I'm looking to hedge. And not just because I kind of give a slight edge to the Eagles, but just because also from the financial perspective of it. And look, the 49ers have been such a great story. Brock Purdy, what he's done is nothing short of incredible, and there's no shame in him not winning this game because the fact they've gotten this far is very, very impressive. But that's what happens when you have a great overall defense, overall offense, and a mastermind in Kyle Shanahan. Now, look, there's some important things that I think stand out, too, in this game. It's Brock Purdy, of course, playing in a true road game in a playoff that's going to be very, very difficult, very loud. Shanahan already spoke to that they're going to have to be doing some snap signaling and trying to get things going quickly and efficiently. Also a stat that I found that was pretty interesting. If you look at Football Outsiders, they talk about third and fourth down efficiency. Philadelphia is second offensively and third/fourth down passing. San Francisco is 23rd defensively. Now, conversely, Philly is second defensively in that regard, while San Francisco is seventh. Those are the most important plays in these type of games, and Philly has the clear advantage in that regard as well. Philly's pass defense is arguably the best in the NFL. Now, San Francisco overall, their defense is the best, I think. But offensively with Hurts, you can get so much different ways to attack any type of defense that I think that will prove to be the difference. If you want to play devil's advocate, Philly's weak part is their run defense. They rank 21st according to DVOA, and they let the Giants get 6 yards per carry. but I don't know how long that's going to be sustainable. At some point, the pressure has to be put on Purdy, and I don't know if he's going to be able to overcome it. So, look, I would love my futures bet to hit and the 49ers to win, but I think I'm going to hedge stronger in the side of Philly. So I lean with them covering 2 in the hook in this game.
Are you over, under? I mean, they've been so – I went all overs last weekend and was over, so.
You
sound shocked.
I'm just cracking up because I remember hearing that stat. So it's tough to look. The NFL playoffs are a little bit different beast, and everybody's looking to bet the overs and wanting to get infatuated with that because they want to see a high-scoring game. But look, in this first game, I have a really difficult time getting a gauge on both. If you think Purdy will be fine with passing the ball, I think over is the right move. But if not, then they're really going to try to take the pressure off of him and run the ball, which would make it a lower-scoring game. And, look, the 49ers defense at some point will get beat by Philly, but if they can contain and hold their own enough, that would still age it to the under. So it all comes down to what you think the 49ers offense can do, I believe. But, look, I did bet the under in the next game, actually, guys. I did under 48 for the Bengals and the Chiefs. And that's because you have a Cincinnati team that, look, I've been clamoring about for a while as my top-rated AFC team for quite some time. But this is truly a unique situation because of the unknown with Patrick Mahomes. And instead of wetting out a side pre-flop, which I think the better way to go about it is wait in-game, see how Mahomes looks, see how both of these teams look, and then adjust it in your mind and then bet it. But I think pre-flop, you can get a better advantage on the under because, again, Cincinnati actually has a defense this year. And Kansas City's defense isn't the best, right? I mean, they're definitely vulnerable, but they avoid allowing huge pass plays. Like, they allow just 9.2 yards per pass completion, which is third fewest in the NFL. Now, their weakness, especially as of late, over the last 3 games, they've allowed opposing tailbacks 5.3 yards per rush attempt, 7.6 against Jacksonville. What did the Bengals do exceptionally well last week against a good run defense? They ran the ball with Joe Mixon. Why would you change it? I mean, start it off by running the ball, and if they can do it successfully, they'll do it methodically, and that'll take time off the clock, and Cincinnati can control time of possession. Then on the other side, not only do you have a good Cincy defense, but you have a hindered Patrick Mahomes on the offense, which, again, I think will not bode well for this being a higher-scoring game like we've been accustomed to the last 3 times these teams have met. So I'm going under 48 in this game. Would it shock me if it completely went over? Of course not, because the last 3 times they've played, it's soared over. But this is a different situation. This is a different Bengals team, and this is not Patrick Mahomes at 100%. So give me under 48 for that game. And really quick, I just did a prop to Samaje Perine over 2.5 receptions at plus 125. I don't know how much time we have left, so I won't go too deep into it, but that's another prop I did for this game as well, guys.
Daddy Burke with us, VSiN Sports Network at Daddy Burke 5, Burke's Best Bets. Daddy will wrap here with the -1. Is this just a setup, or is it really going to be a 1-point ball game?
It's just one of those things where they opened Kansas City -2 in the hook, and you saw this game going down with Cincy, and everybody now is finally enamored with them, and everybody and their mother wants to bet them, and then you're realizing, well, Patrick Mahomes isn't going to be 100%, and you've seen what's happened the last 3 times they've played. I personally wish not everybody was in love with the Bengals, because when that happens, usually, the contrarian side comes about, but I've had this notion of the Bengals being the top team for like 2 months now. So I still think they give an edge, and it's really just because of liability right now, right? I mean, with the sports books, you're getting money on both sides. Oh, you get Kansas City in almost an underdog role. Oh, you're getting Cincinnati at a cheap price against a banged-up Mahomes. Like, it's just equal action, and it's still going to move so much by the time we get to game time. So realistically, it's not going to fall right there. It'll probably be a field goal or touchdown game. The last 3 have been a field goal game. Why should this one be any different? But really, it's just who do you think's going to win? Just take the money line at that point.
Yeah, Danny, that's what I was going to ask. With this line at 1, do you just recommend following your heart and picking the money line whichever way your heart leads you?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what do you save? Maybe like 10 cents at most. Like if you're going to be doing -1 instead of a money line, the chances it's going to fall on 1 are slim to none. But why even allow that opportunity to present itself? Like pay 5 cents more if you're going to even do. And some books don't even do that. Like I'm looking right now, like Kansas City on the spread's -115, but on the money line they're -113. Like it makes no sense sometimes because these computerized algorithms don't make it the way it should be. So make sure you're looking at both. And even if it is a little bit more expensive, pay the 2-5 cents more for the money line just for a little bit of security.
Daddy Burke with his VSiN Sports Network. Follow Daddy on Twitter at DaddyBurke5. Hear him on VSiN throughout the weekend across the nation and, of course, on Sirius XM. And be sure to check his podcast out. Daddy, enjoy your football Sunday, bud. It was great to get caught up with you. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely, guys. You too. Thanks for having me on.
Good stuff with Daddy Burke. Few minutes there. Loaded show today. We dove into Fred Hoiberg and Nebraska basketball's prospects as 10 games left. The tough one against Northwestern. Thoughts from a proud papa, Joe Burrow. Jimmy Burrow checking in with us. We'll wind down a Thursday next on Hail Varsity.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, thanks for spending time with us on a Thursday with Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel, at, say it with me, C_Clark_27. On Twitter for Connor Clark. Love it. It's pretty good.
See, it sucks. Connor gets such a better plug for his Twitter because it's just so distinctive.
You can't forget it.
It's iconic.
No, you can't. You can't. Can you forget last night's ball game, calling it? Did you go home and weep? Not because you're cheering for Nebraska, but because you had to endure that turnover fest?
No, not really. I got to listen back to the audio a little bit more, just from a business standpoint, I guess. But
look at Connor. He's checking his.
That's what I was going to say. You think he cares about the game?
What's that about?
Connor cares about his call and his call only.
Hold on, Schmidt. The Bulls are on line too.
Yeah. But, I mean, it was, turnover fest. I talked about it with a couple of my friends afterwards, too. It was like, a part of it kind of felt like we were watching last year's team at certain points, especially in that second half, because there were a bunch of quick trigger threes early in the shot clock, a lot of forced passes that weren't necessarily there. And when you're playing a team like Northwestern, and they're usually pretty good at defense, but this year they are very good at defense. They are 8th in the country in defensive efficiency. Shockingly, that's only 3rd in the Big Ten. There's two other teams above that, which is Purdue and Rutgers. But when you turn the ball over that much against a good defensive team like Northwestern, you're not going to have much success. And I think I know Nebraska didn't play a great game last night, but give a lot of credit to Northwestern. They do not look like they just came off a 9-day COVID pause. They won 2 games in 3 days. I think they're a legitimate tournament team this year.
If I'm Fred, I'm finding somebody with COVID.
That's wrong.
No, I mean, no one needs to get sick forever. I'm just saying maybe they need a pause.
I mean, well, they got the extra day to prepare, I guess.
Didn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of my take on the COVID thing, too. Is it actually going to matter in the grand scheme of things? Two of your most important players are
you can procrastinate.
You just put it off.
Maybe we can't. Maybe there's more, oh, my God, there's 80 feet of snow, so we can't get to X, Y, or Z. Craig asks an important question that we did not ask Mr. Burrow about, but I got a chuckle out of it. I'd really like an unfiltered answer on what Joe Burrow thinks of Mario Verduzco.
I bet the answer...
I think as a person, everybody enjoys Super Mario. As a coach, I don't know. I never coached for him. I know the former Central Florida, Mackenzie Milton, loved the guy.
Well, I bet it's one of those things where if you'd have gotten the unfiltered answer 4 years ago, it'd be different than the unfiltered answer now. Mm-hmm. I bet you probably...
I don't think they worry about it anymore.
No, that's what I'm saying. I bet 4 years ago, you probably have a chip on your shoulder with Scott Frost and Mario Verduzco saying, well... We know you dreamed of playing for Nebraska, but we like our quarterbacks right now. You probably have a chip on your shoulder from that, but once you make it into the NFL and you're playing in the postseason, you're playing for Super Bowls, I don't think you care.
You don't even
in 2019 did he have a chip on his shoulder?
Or 18 for the love of God. Right. You still finished 6th in the country and went to the Sugar Bowl, right? You weren't home for the holidays. And the year later, you do everything at the best that's ever been, 60 touchdown passes.
But remember what we learned from those high-level athletes? We learned it in the Jordan documentary. They keep a chip on their shoulder for a while for motivation.
You keep notes. Back at you on a Friday tomorrow at 4 with Hail Varsity. Thanks.